Hey Knight, so this is the next chapter section thing for the Black Butler series, book, fanfiction, not series. Yeah, okay. So, chapter 24, Sebastian's point of view. It had been a few months since the fight with the angel, and I was still looking for the one who had taken my soul. I think I finally found who had done it, and was heading there now, with the hope that I would finally have what I'm looking for, and be able to go back to my wife, who I'm sure was waiting patiently for me. I could see that there was others at the manor that I believed that Seal's soul might be in, so I waited a little longer for them to leave. And with my bad luck, it began to rain, but that doesn't bother me very much. It wasn't hard to trick that child into letting me into the house, and even more so to get him to take me where I wanted to go. He was too nosy for my taste, but the sooner I had what I was looking for, the better. I wanted to get away from this cruel and angry child. Celine's point of view. Since the fire in London, I was the only one to stay at the manor, the others traveling looking for Seal and Sebastian. I had told them both I would be waiting here for them, so that was where I would stay until they arrived. I was sitting in the kitchen, waiting for the bread I was making for the others to finish, when the storm started to come in. It was the sign that I had been waiting for the last month or two. I pulled the bread out just as the other walked in, sad looks on their faces. We'll find them, Celine. I'm sure Sebastian will be happy to see you when he gets back, Finny says before giving me a hug. I nod my head before looking them over. Rest for tonight and tomorrow. I'm sure they wouldn't want you sick by walking all over looking for them, I say, and then give a small nod before starting to eat some of the fresh bread and walking to their rooms for the night. Once I was done cooking, I walk up to Steele's room with some warm bread in my hand as I sit on the chair by his bed, knowing that soon Sebastian would be putting Steele in bed. I eat as I wait, and to be honest, I had been bad about eating these last few months because of my worry. I had fainted a few times doing simple things, like walking in the garden, or even getting out of bed to walk to the bathroom to take a bath. I finished what I had brought up with me and let a few tears fall, thinking I had been wrong about this. I was just about to get up and leave when the lights go out before coming on, and there in bed was Seal. I jump up and hug him, even though he was asleep. I was happy to see him. Get away from my young master, Sebastian says before roughly pulling me away, a small gasp slipping from my lips. I'm sorry, I stuttered before backing away from the man I loved, who had a confused look on his face as he looked me over. I guess he's never seen a malnutrition demon before. Before he had a chance to say a word, I stumbled out of the room and up to ours, where I tripped, landing hard on the side of the bed, knocking the air out of me. I let a small sob out and sit on the ground, crying, because Sebastian hadn't recognized me when he sees me at all. I had just about screamed when cold hands touched me, and then lips were pressed against mine. I'm so very sorry, my lady. I didn't mean to hurt you, and I didn't recognize you. What happened to you? Sebastian says once he pulls away from the kiss. I shake my head a little before looking into his worried eyes. I couldn't eat without you around, and I started to lose a lot of weight. Because of that, I fainted often and hardly leave the manor, even just to go out to the garden to get some sunlight, unless Finny carried me out there, I say as tears run down my face, and he wipes them away as quickly as they came. He picks me up before carrying me down to the kitchen, where he started to cook things for me. Once he was done, he started to feed me, not letting me say no to a thing he gives me. Then he smiles as I eat without fighting him. After I was done eating all that he had made me, he carried me up to Seal's room and put me in his lap as he started to read a book to Seal, which makes me laugh a little, because it reminded me of the OVA Seal in Wonderland. Once Sebastian was pleased with how far he had read, he picks me up and takes us up to our room, where he lays us on the bed before kissing me all over. I was happy that they were back, and soon fell asleep to Sebastian talking to me, telling me how much he missed me and where he had been. Sebastian's point of view. I was talking to Celine when she fell asleep, which makes me smile a little. She looked paler than when I had changed her, and she had lost a lot of weight since I had seen her last. When I carried her, I realized just how malnourished she had become, and I felt bad about attacking her when she had hugged Seal, who was asleep in his bed. I would have my hands full of nursing both of them back to health, but I knew it would take a little longer with Celine than the young master. I lay there by her, just enjoying the feel of my wife next to me, even if she was a little weak at the moment. The next morning, I get up early and head down to the kitchen, starting food for Celine and the others. I was just about done when Bard walks in and just about falls over. "Sebastian, you're back!" Bard screams, making the others come running in. "I am. The young master is ill, and you will stay out of his room until he is better. Only Celine and myself are allowed in there," I say, giving them all a look that says I'm not joking. They all nod their heads before I set out food for them, and taking some up for Celine, who is going to wake up now. When I walk into her room, she was sitting up, rubbing her eyes. I walk over before kissing her on the top of her head, and her head snaps up when she sees me. "Sebastian, you're really here," she says as I sit next to her, the food on her lap. "Why wouldn't I be here, my lady?" I ask before leaning closer to her, letting my hands run up and down her arm, making her shiver under my touch. She shakes her head a little, and I give her a sly smile before I start to feed her again, like I had last night, which she didn't fight me over. Once she had eaten all the food, I take her ring out of my pocket and slip it back on her. "I missed you," I say before pulling her closer to my body, needing the reassurance that I really was back with her. "Go read to Seal. I will be here when you come back," she says in a soft tone that was like music to my ears. "You will take a bath, then have something more to eat before we go and read to the young master," I say as I pick her up, carrying her to the bathroom, where I put her down on the counter so I could start the water for the bath. Celine's point of view. The last few days, Sebastian had been nursing me back to health, as well as Seal, who had woken up and surprisingly had remembered that Sebastian and I had gotten married, and things about me he didn't remember. But he didn't remember much about the cases he had, or that his aunt was dead. I still couldn't do a lot of walking on my own, but Sebastian and Seal were more than happy to let me lean on them as I walked around. It was the day that he had to go make a speech about some water thing he was working on fixing, and I asked to stay behind, but Seal wouldn't allow it, so I was standing by Lizzie as Seal talked. Lizzie grabbed my hand and pulled me behind her to where Seal and Sebastian were. "We're best of friends now, right, Celine? So you'll get Sebastian to help me convince Seal to go looking for the white stag, right?" Lizzie asks as we walk. "Of course I will," I say, before she starts running, yelling Seal's name and jogging me behind her, and letting go once she can hug Seal. Sebastian gives me a small worried look before looking at Seal and Lizzie. "Seal, look at this. Let's go looking for it," Lizzie says before looking at me like I was supposed to tell Seal it was a good idea. "Sounds like a fairy tale," Seal says, making Lizzie frown a little. "Seal, it would be good to do this with Lizzie," I say in a soft voice, which makes him look at me a little worried. I hadn't talked much since he had come back because I was constantly asleep or Sebastian kept me away from others. Seal was the only one besides him to see me, and that was mostly at meals, where Sebastian would feed me, making Seal laugh a little, thinking it was funny to see his butler bow to my every need. Lizzie started to cry, and Seal sighs before asking her if she wanted to go looking for the stag. As Sebastian gets the boat ready, I walk silently behind Seal and Lizzie, who are going to get new clothes for this adventure. "Seal, we need to dress Celine up in something cute as well. I want her to ride in our boat," Lizzie says when she turns to look at me. Seal sighs a little before looking at me as well. Seal's point of view. I was glad to see that Elizabeth and Celine were getting along now, but if I let Celine in the same boat as us, the people would talk. "Lizzie, I'm going to ride with Mayrin and the others. I want you and Seal to have this time alone together. And I'll still be here, so please, don't worry about dressing me up," Celine says, giving Elizabeth a big smile. Elizabeth gives a small pout before looking over at me with big, begging eyes. "If Celine doesn't want to ride in the same boat than us, Elizabeth, I'm not going to force her. She's still getting better after being sick, so the others will be more able to take care of her than you or I if something was to happen to her," I say, as Celine gives me a grateful smile. "Lizzie, how about I help you and Mayrin pick out a cute dress for yourself?" Celine says, and Lizzie smiled widely before running over to her, giving her a hug. I look over the two of them only to realize that Celine was wearing a simple dress that didn't make her look like she was rich, and that annoyed me a little. Sebastian told me that because of how much weight that Celine had lost from being sick, none of her dresses fit her right, so she had to borrow things from Mayrin. I leave the two girls to go look at dresses. Celine's point of view. Lizzie was looking at dresses, and I pick up the light blue one that I knew she would get. Lizzie had Mayrin running all over, and I finally hold the dress that had been in front of her the whole time, so she had to see it on her. "This is perfect. Celine, how did you know this would look best on me?" Lizzie asks as she looks me over with wide eyes. I just give her a knowing smile. "I'm just one hell of a handmaid," I say, which makes Lizzie laugh because Sebastian says that all the time. Once she was ready to go, I walked silently with Mayrin, and by the time we got to the boats, every noble was watching Seal and Lizzie. Sebastian looked me over as Bard talks to him, but he makes it look like he was reading over a list in his hand. Sebastian gives them orders not to make a mess of things, and I shake my head at Mayrin's comments as we get into the boat. Finny sits next to me before giving me a big smile. Celine, you are being really quiet about all of this, so tell us what you think, Finny says, making the others two look at me, waiting to see what I have to say. I'm not going to do anything to make Seal or Sebastian mad at me, and if you're wise, you will do just as Sebastian says, I say before giving them that look that said not to do anything. They jump into the water, and I shake my head at their silly attempts. I look up at the carriage that Lou was on, and when we stop for lunch, I shake my head, knowing that the others had messed it up. You three are so stupid, I say before seeing Sebastian walking over, looking a little upset. He started to scold them as he cooks, which was slightly amazing to watch. He never once hit me or gave me the cold look that he gave the others. I hadn't even eaten the food that they had taken from Seal and Lizzie. After lunch, as we were on the boat, I ended up falling asleep, which makes the other panic a little, because I haven't had a lot of energy today. I'm woken up by Lizzie, who's pulls on my arm. Celine, Seal's giving up on looking for this stag. Come with me to look for it. We will find it together, Lizzie says. I give her a kind smile before getting out of the boat and walking with her. Sebastian's point of view. Lady Elizabeth woke Celine and had her walking with her to look for the stag, which she was being rather stubborn about. I shake my head, but keep a close eye on Celine, because she was walking slowly behind Lady Elizabeth, but that didn't stop her from turning around to talk with Celine every so often. I take my eyes off them for a few minutes, only for Lady Elizabeth to get them both in trouble. Lady Elizabeth was holding onto the boat, but also Celine, who looked unhappy by this whole situation. The young master looks at me, worrying his eyes when he sees Celine with her. Will Celine be able to help her, he asks, and I shake my head, a little unsure of myself. I don't know, young master, I say. When Lady Elizabeth stood up, Celine put her hands on Elizabeth's waist to keep her steady, and when she falls over, lands in Celine's open arms, bracing her fall and holding her close. Elizabeth was trying to get the rope off the boat, and Celine holding her back a little. Stop, Lizzie. You're going to tip the boat, Celine says in a soft tone that only I could hear. The young master gives me orders, and I was a little uncertain about leaving him alone to get both Celine and Elizabeth. Celine's point of view. Seal was almost to the boat when Sebastian lets the water run faster. As he was under the water, he grabs Lizzie, then holds out his hand to me. I shake my head and let Lizzie go in his hold before pushing them as hard as I could to the surface of the water, knowing that Sebastian would get me out before he came to get me. Seal's heartbroken face let me know that he was sorry he hadn't saved me. I swim as high as I can before being pushed back down. I catch a look of Sebastian getting Lizzie, and then he pulls me out before getting Seal. I sit away from them as Seal wakes up Lizzie and throws herself on him. They are going to run off to find the stag when Lizzie looks me over and pulls Seal over to me and hugs me, pulling Seal down as well. I can't breathe, I gasped, and they were soon picked up off me, letting me breathe right. Let's go look at the stag, Celine, Lizzie says before giving me a big smile. Sebastian picks me up and we walk to where it is. Sebastian tells him about the legend before Tonica interrupts him. Sebastian puts me on the ground in front of him, holding me up as the others look at the formation. It is pretty big, but nothing compared to the things I had seen in my time. We head home, and once there, I walk up to my room and change before going to bed, knowing that Sebastian would wake me when he was ready for me to eat and change. Chapter 25. Sebastian's point of view. It had been several weeks since we had come back from the boat trips to look for the stag, and Celine was looking better. She had gained weight back and was eating normally like she had before we had left her. I was in the kitchen making dinner when Celine dances in with her favorite dress on before walking over to me. Sebastian, let's go out and get our picture taken. We didn't have a wedding photo done, and I would really love to have one, Celine says once I pull her closer to me. I give a small sigh before shaking my head no, not wanting to have this conversation again. Since she had gotten better, she was back to her cheerful self, and asked me almost twice a day for a wedding picture, which I saw no point in. She huffs a little before pulling away from me and stomping her foot. Fine, then I'll go get one by myself, and you regret saying no to me, Sebastian Miculus, she says before walking out of the room. She had never said my last name before, and I stopped what I was doing to chase her down, finding her not that far from the young master's study. I pick her up before returning to the kitchen to keep the food from burning, but kept a tight hold on Celine. Stop fighting with me, Mrs. Mickless, or your dress will get ruined before we get out for the picture, I say, and she stops moving in my arms. I hadn't called her my last name, and judging by her blush, she had forgotten it herself. You'll really get one with me? She asks in a soft voice, and I give a small sigh. If that is what you really wish, my lady, then yes, I will, I say before kissing the top of her head. I let her go, and she stands by me as I finish what I was making. She follows me to get the young master to tell him it was time for dinner, and she had a big smile on her face the whole time. What is she so happy about, Sebastian? The young master asks when he looks up at us when we walk in. I agreed to go have a photo with her, I say, which makes him chuckle a little. Really, Sebastian? You willingly agreed to take a photo with her? Celine, what did you say this time that you hadn't any other time? The young master asks as he walks over to her, taking her hand, as we walk to the dining room. I told him he would be sorry, then called him by his full name. I was just so mad at him, but now he's the best person in the world right now, Celine says before giving me a look that held nothing but love in it. The young master shakes his head a little before giving Celine a smile. Tomorrow, then you will go take your photo, and I want to watch it, he says, which makes Celine smile even more. Celine's point of view. I was picking out a dress for today when Cécile walks into our room with Sebastian behind him. I'm sorry, Celine, but I got a case that I need your help with, so you can't have a photo done today. But I will make sure you get one, Cécile says before looking over at Sebastian, who is shaking his head a little. I sigh a little, but followed them out to the carriage that was waiting, so we could go out on this case. When we get to the crime scene, I stay back by Sebastian as Cécile goes talk with the police. I looked over at my husband, only to see him distracted by some cats. Cécile has that look of shock on his face, and I didn't blame him. Say good day to your feline friends, Cécile says as he walks past Sebastian, and he gives me a shy look, almost like he was embarrassed. I shake my head and walk behind them in silence until we get to the carriage. We end up at Undertaker's, and I sigh a little because the last time I had seen him was when I was bleeding to death on his back. As Sebastian tells his joke, I didn't really understand it, but rolled my eyes as Undertaker gives Cécile the body. He gives a little look as if to see how I was really doing. After going to the funeral and seeing the photographer, I knew that I wasn't going to get my photo for a long time, so I was quiet on the ride home. Is something wrong, Celine? Cécile asks as he takes my hand, and I jump a little because I had been deep in thought. Nothing. I was just thinking that I might not get my picture at this rate. I guess it was silly to want something like that, I say before looking out the window again. I wasn't going to cry over something like this, and shake my head, giving up on the thought of having one picture with Sebastian being impossible at this point. I've almost been here a year. I just wanted one thing to prove that I had been together with Sebastian that long. I think as I get out of the carriage and walk into the manor without saying a word to the two men who are having a hushed conversation. Cécile's point of view. Are you sure about that, young master? Sebastian whispers as we walk. I had felt bad that Celine thought that she might get the picture that she wanted. In many ways, I felt like it was my fault that she didn't even have one picture of them together, and they were married. Yes, and that's final. You saw how sad she was when I told her she couldn't have her picture. And to be honest, Sebastian, she has stayed by our side for almost a year now, not asking us for much, I say as I watch Celine walk away from a study, a sad and distant look on her face. Sebastian sighs a little before nodding his head in agreement. We would take Celine out on the case, and if we didn't get to her, walk to a photo studio so they could have a picture, and if there is no place open, call to have them come to my manor first thing tomorrow morning, just to make her happy again. I sent Sebastian off to find out if we were really dealing with a killer using photos to kill. Celine's point of view. I was baking in the kitchen when Sebastian came down, a small smile on his face. Celine, I need you to change into a nice dress before we leave, Sebastian says, and I sigh before looking over at the dough that needed to rise for a few hours. Fine, Sebastian, I say before heading up to our room to change, but just about scream when I see all the spider webs and spiders. Sebastian, I scream as I back out of the room. I didn't have many fears, but I did have a rather bad case of arachnophobia. I back out of the room and hit the wall across the hall from it hard. Sebastian was by my side rather quickly, and I see Cécile running down the hall and a worried look on his face. Celine, Sebastian asks, a worried look on his face as he looks me over. Spiders, please kill them, I say before tears start to fall, and Sebastian chuckles a little as he stands up to walk to our room. Celine, are you all right? Cécile asks before looking at Sebastian, a confused look on his face. Not at all. There are spiders all over my room, and Sebastian chuckles like it's nothing, I scream before pulling my legs up to my chest. seeing as how I had fallen to the floor at some point. Seal huffs and rolls his eyes at me. Have you never heard of arachnophobia? I have a rather bad case of it due to an experience when I was younger. Until those little monsters are dead, I will not step foot into that room, I say before standing up and to run down the hall. Arachnophobia? Isn't that the fear of spiders? Sebastian asks, stopping me from moving. I spin to look at him, now mad. Yes, when I was about 5, I was bitten several times, Yes, when I was about 5, I was bitten several times by 3 different kinds of poisonous spiders at the same time and almost died. Since then, I can't be around them, I say before walking away from Master and the butler, so very angry with them. I end up running into Finny, who had a worried look on his face. Celine, we all heard you yelling for Sebastian. What's wrong? Finny asks as he hugs me, as I break down and cry. I can't explain it right now, I say between sobs. There was no way in the world I was going to get sleep in that room tonight. I feel hands on my back, and I'm being pulled away from Finny. Sebastian, what's wrong with her? Finny asks as Sebastian turns me so I was crying into him. There's a large infestation of spider in the manor. Finny, I need you and the others to check the manor and get rid of all of them, Sebastian says before I feel his hand gently running through my hair. He then leads me back up the stairs to our room. I killed all of them for you, my lady, and pulled out a dress that I thought would look stunning on you, Sebastian says. He helps me change and cleans up my face before we leave with Seal to catch the murderer. Stay in the carriage until we get back, Seal yells as he jumps out of it, chasing the woman. I shake my head before sitting back and doing as he asks. Seal's point of view. I had chased that woman all the way to the tower, and she was slowly making her way to me. I was backed into the wall and telling her to change before calling her a pig. She lost it at that, and then I was pulled out of the way, and someone was holding on to me, keeping me safe. Really, Seal, I can't let you or Sebastian out of my sight for a moment, now can I? Celine asks, making me scowl. I told you to wait in the carriage. You're going to ruin your dress, I snap as I turn in her hold, only to see her dressed as a man, and a sly smile on her face. You really think I'd do such a thing when you're in danger? She asks before pulling me closer to protect me from the flames that miss us. I finally ask Sebastian how long he's going to take and tell him to come, knowing he isn't going to let me get hurt. I walk over to the railing, talking to the woman, and Celine stayed a few steps behind me, as if she was ready to pull me from danger at any moment. I had to give it to her. She was useful to have around, and that weird Reaper was being a distraction for Sebastian. When Sebastian gets up here, I notice that Celine shrinks back a little, almost as if she was afraid that he would get mad at her. But I pull her behind me and notice her cheeks were a little red after Sebastian's last comment to the Reaper. I'll have to tell him to apologize to his wife later, I think, as Sebastian kicks the camera out of her hand, and the Reaper catches it. I walk forward, pulling Celine behind me, and she hangs her head like she had done something wrong, which she had. I run forward, letting Celine go to help the woman, but Sebastian gets me out of there. The Reaper lands with Celine in his arms, a worried look on his face. He drops her before flipping through his book, talking about how things went wrong. I walked over to Celine, helping her up, and when I look over my shoulder, I see a small scowl on Sebastian's face. The Reaper runs over and takes a photo with Sebastian before running away, and I see a small hurt look in Celine's eyes. What were you thinking, sir? You could have died, Sebastian says, and I led her over to him. I was thinking of saving you both, she says, which makes Sebastian blush a little as he looks over his wife, who took off the hat her hair was in. I talk with Sebastian, and when we get home, Celine walks away, muttering something about not wanting a photo now that some man had stolen it. I look at Sebastian, who had a hurt look on his face. Tomorrow, call a photographer, and you will have a proper photo here in the manor. This is an order, Sebastian, I say, then walk up to my room with him right behind me. Sebastian's point of view. After putting the young master to bed, I walk up to my room to find Celine walking around, an angry look on her face. How dare he, she says before looking up at me. I put my hands up as if to surrender to her, and she runs over, throwing her arms around my neck, and kisses me. I was a little shocked, but enjoy the kiss. When she pulls away, her cheeks are bright red. How dare you flirt with that man, she scolds in a playful tone, and I give a small chuckle as she pulls away from me. You make a rather attractive man, my dear lady, I say, before stalking forward like I was going to hunt her down. She blushes a little before looking up at me with those fuchsia eyes that only a demon has, making me smile slyly at her. Once I was close to her, I pull her closer and kiss her until she starts to lose her footing. I pull back and give her a quick peck on the lips. Sebastian, tell me the truth. Do you want to have a picture with me? She asks, a blush on her cheeks darkening, and I chuckle a little as I lean closer to her for another kiss. I want it more than anything else after seeing how happy the thought of it making you so happy, I say as we look into each other's eyes. She nods her head, then rested on my chest, letting me know that things were fine between us now, and I had lost the will to yell at her for putting herself in such a dangerous thing. I have to go, but I will be back soon, I say before kissing her one last time to go find the information my young master ordered. Celine's point of view. When I get up the next morning, Sebastian wasn't there like normal, and I give a little sigh as I get out of the bed. I look around the room only to see a dress out and a note by it. Sebastian had left it telling me to go take a bath and change before meeting Seal down in his study for a meeting. Seal wanted me to help with a new toy or something like that. I take a nice long bath before getting dressed, and when I get down to Seal's study, I see his photographer talking to Seal and Sebastian. I'm sorry for interrupting, I say as I go to back out of the room, but Seal gives me a smile. Right on time, Celine. I was just about to send Sebastian to get you. I wanted some pictures taken and have a few with you in them, Seal says before waving his hands around, only for me to realize that everyone was here. We all head outside and start with photos. We all had ones where we were alone and then just the women or just the men. I was a little surprised when Seal had one taken with each of us, but more shocked when Seal pulled me aside. Celine, there's one photo left, but you can't take it in that dress. Mayrin will take you to my study to change into the perfect one, Seal says. I nod and follow Mayrin into Seal's study, only to see my wedding dress hanging up there. I changed quickly, and when we got back outside, I see Sebastian in the same clothes he was wearing when we got married. I finally was getting my wedding picture, and I smiled brightly as it was taken. Okay, so that's it for those two chapters. Well, yeah. We'll leave those there, and we're only let's see. There's only 4 chapters left, so those will be the next 2 videos, or the last 4 chapters. Alrighty. Peace out, Knights.